So I'm sitting here in Johannesburg and would like to say a very, very big and warm welcome to all of you. We've got people from all over the world. And if you've just dialed in, if you can please just check that you are on mute. Otherwise, we have too many background noises going on. So on behalf of Mindful Leadership, I want to say welcome in the midst of such uncertain times. And we have decided to gather this group as an experiment, and it's in the spirit of learning, and also in the spirit of connecting, sharing from around the world. What are we learning? How are we making sense of this? What's happening on the ground? Because as isolation kicks in, it's also difficult to locate ourselves in the world. So Casper's been doing a lot of work over the past week to gather this community, and the intention is to do this once a week, and the community will change and adapt as we are learning. But just to share with you the format that we'll be following, we're going to be starting just by taking a moment or three just to ground ourselves, and Dr. Simon Weitzman, who's the chairperson of IMISA, the Institute for Mindfulness in South Africa, will lead that for us. Just very shortly for all of us to arrive. We know there's a lot of freneticism, and this skill of just taking a few moments will be key, and to do that hourly. The second part of this hour will be people from different industries in different countries will briefly share what is happening, what are they seeing, what's working, what are the challenges. And Casper will be facilitating this to make sure that we keep to specific bites and to have as many people speak in this hour as possible, but also not too short that it's not meaningful. So it's that balancing act. So Casper might interrupt people to say, well, let's move on to the next person, but it's in the spirit of making sure we can get the most out of the hour. And then the third and last piece will be based on what we are hearing. We've got two specialists on the line and experts in their own fields. And I know them both personally, and what I know about them is that they are incredible humans, very humble, open to learn. And they are Sonia Blichnout and David Allen. David dialed in from Amsterdam. Sonia is from Pretoria. And Sonia is a complex adaptive system thinking expert. I learn a lot from just how she thinks and the fundamental learning approach we need here. And David is a specialist in how do we appropriately engage in life, and how do we prioritize, how do we stay productive. And in this time of incredible disruption, that's a particular question. And we hear from all our clients how overwhelmed we are with the change, learning new ways of working. So how do we stay appropriately engaged and not overwhelmed? So I'm going to hand over to Casper. Just one last comment. We've got an artist on the line who's going to be drawing what we are speaking about. It's James Durno, also here at the, well, I'm not sure where you live, James, but it's lovely to have you online with us. You're going to be sketching and drawing so that we have a visual representation of what we are learning, and we will be distributing that to all of you. So thank you everybody for being here and for experimenting and learning with us. And over to you, Casper.
Oh, thank you, Dina. I'm going to have to play the role of somebody who sticks to the time, and Sonia calls it the benevolent autocrat, in a way. So to make sure that we get through this this time frame, and I'm very happy to introduce Simon Weitzman, Dr. Weitzman. One of the things in the podcast he just recently that really caught my mind was saying that our bodies are not immune to this virus. And that we all know now, but neither is our thinking brain, neither is that part between our two ears. And it's a real assault with information on all of us. So none of us could really be here. We've got so many other things to do. So we thought that Simon is the right person to make sure that we're all present and here, and maybe give us some insights. What happens with the thinking brain, and what happens with us in the distress of the coronavirus. So Simon, over to you.
Thanks, Casper. Thanks, Dina. And good afternoon, everybody. And good evening if you're in some other time zone. It struck me that the immune system doesn't recognize coronavirus, which what makes it a novel virus. And the response or the reaction to the virus is equally novel to our mental and neural faculties. It's never been seen before in our lifetime. So the common reaction to something which is unknown and a threat is to move the brain to varying degrees of stress, shock, and trauma. So I want to just help us today, and then hopefully as these sessions progress over time, we can deepen and widen the ways that we can navigate and manage this skillfully. So I'd like to start by giving a 30-second neuroanatomy lesson without any pictures. James, maybe you'll be able to translate this into amazing images for us. And how we're going to do is you take your right hand and fold your thumb across your palm like this, and then fold your fingers over your thumb like this, and then turn it, and then when you turn it to face you, you'll be looking at the front of the brain. If you turn it to the back, you're looking at the back of the brain. And the little part where your fingernails are, and just above them, the most recent part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. Now, this part is involved with perspective and higher cognition, relationality, and integration. If you lift up your thumb, your fingers, your thumb, this is what we call the animal or mammalian brain, which is involved with learning, with the stress response, with memory, and a lot of core emotions. So when we get stressed, this part is very, very active. If you take a line down from your thumb over that little bump to where your wrists are, that's the brainstem, which is what we share with reptiles, what we call the reptilian brain, where we get much more primal function, we get more basic function, control of the breath, control of blood pressure, and most importantly in our context, the primitive survival reaction. So a lot of what is happening at the moment as we confront this novelty, this uncertainty and threat, is that we tend to migrate from up here, down here, and then keep descending down into the reptilian brain, from which emanates a trauma or shock response, which has an effect on our bodies, and it affects our higher levels of thinking. And it also affects our relationality in the sense that we tend to isolate ourselves and self-preserve and forget about being aware of other people. So what I would like to do in a minute or two is just offer one brief practice, and whether you've practiced mindfulness or breathing before or have never practiced it before doesn't matter, because this moment you have everything you need to practice. You have a breath, you have a body, you have the capacity to pay attention. So that's all the raw material that you need. What we're going to do this afternoon is, instead of going up, we're going to descend down beneath the wrist, down the arm, and into the rest of the body. We're going to go in and down. And what the effect of that is to begin to soothe this part of the brain, the reptilian brain, and give input or neural information, which tells us that in this moment, we're okay, that in this moment, it's safe, and in this very moment, there's no threat. And so I'm going to invite you, and you can practice this little technique either with your eyes open, but see if you can just gaze slightly away from the screen so you're not distracted too much by the faces. Or if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes, and what that will do is just bring you just a slightly heightened sensitivity to your own sensations, to your own body, and most importantly in this moment, to your breath. You've been breathing from a few seconds after you were born, and you've never stopped breathing. And it's the singular, most consistent physical element that we can now draw on. So seeing if you can breathe slightly deeper than normal in through the nose, and follow the out breath into the body. So breathing in through the nose, and then breathing out softly through the mouth, following the out breath into the body. And by following the out breath, I mean becoming attentive to the sensations of breathing out as the body softens with the out breath. So being aware of breathing in through the nose, slightly deeper than normal, and then exhaling, and now begin to slow your exhale So it's still going down and into the body, but you're beginning to slow and prolong the out breath. So we don't force the breath to go out, but we take a little bit longer to let the out breath leave the body. So we call this a long, slow out breath. Breathing in through the nose. Breathing out through the mouth, long and slow. Breathing in, noticing the sensation of air coming in through the nose. And then noticing the sensation of the body as the out breath is elongated and slowed. How the body begins to soften into the chair. How the muscles just begin to let go. We are literally telling our nervous systems as we breathe out, soften, extend the out breath. In this moment, I'm okay and everything's okay, which is true in this moment actually. Whatever the mind is saying about what is to come, checking in this moment whether you're okay. Breathing in through the nose. Breathing out long and slow through the mouth, following the out breath into the body. Hey, thanks, Casper.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. So, yeah, may we all be here in this meeting. So I'm going to start straight away. And I know we've got one participant or presenter that really has to go as soon as possible. So I'm going to kind of introduce him first. It's Bernard Fick, the CEO of Prudential Investment Managers in South Africa, which is a big investment firm in South Africa. Please, Bernard, if you can share with us what's happening in your industry, and it's going to be a short 2 minutes, and any tips you can give other industries about what can work and what not. Over to you.
Casper, sorry that I have to rush. We are one of the critical service industries, and we have to register on a bloody website, which keeps on crashing, to get letters to our staff so they can travel tomorrow. So there's a bit of challenge there, and I'm trying to get on to this site. Yeah, look, I guess from our perspective, two key issues: the business itself, which is in a decent shape. You know, we are a white-collar business, so most of our people are technologically fine, and effectively all 180 staff can work remotely and have mobile computing power. And then the investment markets in which we operate, which obviously are really in turmoil. So there's some significant liquidity strains in the capital markets that we are trying to maneuver through. We're actively engaging with the regulators, the reserve banks, National Treasury and the like, directly and via the industry body, to try and get more liquidity into markets. The announcement yesterday of quantitative easing, or at least our version of that, something that we've pushed hard for. We've been writing significant letters and making significant calls. So yeah, that component we're trying to work on. We definitely have seen strains for the last week or so, in particularly the bond market that became very liquid for a bit. It's been better the last day and a half. So let's hope that continues. From a business perspective, clearly communication is key. So, I've been communicating a lot to staff on a regular basis. It's interesting to adapt to virtual meetings, which I have to say people are quite resilient. Quite amazing how quickly they've adopted to Zoom and Microsoft Teams and the like. We historically have considered ourselves very much an in-office team-type business, team-based business, but within the space of 10 days have adopted to 30 people in a meeting at one point in time debating investment ideas remotely. So don't underestimate the resilience of people. That's the one thing I can tell you.
Bernard, is there maybe one specific tip that you can give the rest of the industries? What is working well for you?
I think Be decisive. There's no time. You don't have time to waste. Make quick decisions and empower people to make quick decisions. So I've done that. I've put a small team around me of sort of a business continuity planning committee, and I've given them very wide power to make decisions and implement and get on with it. Your feedback loops are just not as quick as they ordinarily would, so people must just be empowered to do it. So make decisive decisions and execute. You don't have all the information. If you think you've got 80%, then make a call and move.
Good. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you for that contribution.
There are apologies that I may have to now dial out, but yeah, I hope it's valuable. Good luck, guys. Hang in there. We'll see you on the other side, I guess. No, that's not heaven. It's just 21 days. A lot of people say, what does that mean?
Good. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna zoom out of South Africa and first ask Hans Otterling. Hans, I've got so many people on. I just hope Hans is on the.
I'm here,
Hans is part of North Zone. It's a technology investment partnership in one of Europe's most exceptional investment companies in, and when they're the lead investor in Spotify, just to give you an idea. Hans, you work in the Scandinavian countries, you work all over. Please give us some insights and some tips of what's coming and what we can do.
Yeah, so we have approximately 70 young companies in our portfolio. We invest in early stages many times when the company is just developing their product, right? So we're working with, our entrepreneurs, I would say, are average age maybe 30 years old. So they have never touched a downside like this before. They haven't been through any, the crash 2000. They were too young to remember. So what we try to do here is to be fairly direct and almost autocratic, tell them what to do. And we have a five-point program, which I'm going to run through with you very, very quickly. What we tell them, since these are young companies and most of them are actually burning cash, they are not generating any profits yet. We tell them, of course, that the number one thing that they need to focus on is cash preservation, lower the burn rate, seek those government grants immediately, tax relief, negotiate hard with big item tickets like rent, go over your marketing cost, etc., right? Everything to expand the timeline and preserve cash. The second thing we ask them is to do business model innovation. We're really creative on the short term tactics, involve your sales team and marketing team, and then also at the same time think strategic long term. What's going to happen with your business model 6 months to 12 months from now, considering what's happening in the market. And then the third thing we ask them to do is to review the threats to their operations, and that's primarily third parties and supply chain, external strategic partners, and see what's the threat there, what can actually disrupt the business to delivering services to your customers. And then the fourth one, which is very important, is talent preservation. Really to make sure that you keep a very transparent process in this and involve everyone. At the same time, you have to be decisive. This is not a time for a lot of collaboration discussions. This is more a time for action. But really spot who is the critical people in your organization that you need to retain and motivate. And then the fifth one, the last one, is there is no wait and see. We have to act now, and you have to track your action plan and really make sure that everyone understands that you are actually tracking what you have decided to do, so things are actually happening. It is of course a very, very difficult time for many of our companies, and this is a thing that we work on developing on a daily basis, because obviously this is new to us as well, but this is the 5 points that we try to deliver to.
Hans, thank you so much for that Scandinavian wisdom. Thank you for that. I wish we had more time. And while we're in Europe, Federico Martorano, he's the CEO of a company called Atex, and they operate between Bologna and also Scandinavia, and it's more of a media company. I mean, they've done fantastic work, award-winning media-focused company. And tell us what's happening in Italy.
But just to add there, sorry, just to add that Federico is also from the northern side of Italy, so very close to the heart of it.
So we unfortunately, Federico, have 2 minuti, se è possibile dire qualcosa, per favore, vai avanti.
Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, as Caspar and Dina were saying, yes, I'm based I live in Bologna, but I mean the business is based in Milan. And Atex is a small multinational company providing mission critical software for the media and publishing industry. So basically, our customers are big publishers, big newspapers and magazine group that use our software to produce the papers and online businesses. Yes, I mean, I've been asked by you guys to share some tips because Italy, I mean, unfortunately has been the first Western country heavily hit by this pandemic, this virus. And we have been overwhelmed. So I tried to summarize what happened in 4 maybe keywords, if you don't mind. The first one is velocity, in a sense that I really remember the Friday 4 weeks ago when we got the first confirmed cases in Italy. And after that, in 2 or 3 weeks, my life and business life changes rapidly. And we need to act. Fortunately, I mean, as a nature of the business, we were already used to work remotely and to do part of the job from home. But I mean, what I probably need to say that we have offices in many parts of the world. We have offices in UK, in Scandinavia, in Australia, in Singapore, in North America. And also, I mean, we still have a lot of projects ongoing. So the big challenge for us has been how we can deal with these ongoing projects, because some of those require people inside. And yeah, I mean, we probably use one of our most better attitude we have here in Italy, so is the creativity. So we are trying to, of course, use technology, but on the other hand, also to, let's say, try to put in the computer what we're used to do with the human being, and it's working. I mean, the news industry is certainly nowadays is a strategic industry because everyone needs reliable information. But on the other hand, they are facing very challenging time because basically the advertising revenue completely disappeared in most of our customers. Even though, I mean, the revenue from digital subscription going up, but probably not in the same scale.
So Federico, if I can just come in, because we have many, I was just like to say, what is the one big tip that you can give us in South Africa? What is the one bullet point tip?
Well, certainly act now. I mean, be very proactive because this is something very bad. And I mean, maybe a tip that could be helpful in any niche industry. What we are trying to do is to don't waste this time and do a massive training program for the employees and also back up our customer because what happening is that they have a lot of confirmed cases within their offices. So we are backing our customers.
Thank you. Thank you. And we've got Mauro Baldacini as well. Mauro, I'm going to go into South Africa now for a few conversations. So please hold on for a one-liner that you can maybe give us in the end. Thank you for that, Federico. If I come straight back to South Africa, we've got Anel Bosman. She's newly appointed head of Nedbank CIB. Anel, I hope you are somewhere, somebody who's just been appointed, I think from the 1st of April. What's happened in your world, and maybe 1 or 2 tips for other industries? Are you there, Anel? Let's see if I can unmute Anel. Anel,
yes,
can you hear?
Yeah, sorry, I had a multi-screen issue there.
Fantastic. You can share with us, please.
Yes. I think for me, it was absolutely overwhelming stepping into 2 roles at the same time. But what I have done is absolutely focus on what Bernard referred to earlier as essential services. since I'm currently running a dealing room, where we need to make those bond prices that Bernard referred to as an absolute meltdown. And we are actually making sure that the market remains liquid and that there is enough cash to fund the bank. So those are things that has really been challenging. The fact that that business actually runs on a fast flow of information, the atmosphere in a room and the look on faces from a managerial point of view has made it very difficult to do it remotely, because you need to understand the risks. But what we have done is we have managed to take very sophisticated telephone, computer and recording systems and split them across 4 venues, including people working from home, so that we make sure that we've got many redundancies if required. I think the one thing, the one piece of it, the one thing that's really obvious to me and has been the most valuable is how to link what we do to the sense of purpose. And in this specific case, it is to keep the financial systems working, because if you have a lockdown and you can't pay somebody or you can't buy something, it becomes really, really important. So for me, purpose has linked it to that, and somehow we need to link hope to that, and make people think through the whole lockdown and how we will look afterwards, which links to how our businesses should look afterwards. But then I think on a practical level, we have an email going out every day, which gives lots of information on logistics and emotional and how to stay connected, but also with a bit of humor in it. And the feedback is that people really look forward to that email that come across their desk twice a day.
Fantastic. Anel, thank you so much for that contribution. And again, everybody, we would summarize what's happened in this meeting also from the experts, and you'll get a document hopefully within 24 hours after this meeting where you'll get more information. And I know, Tabani, I hope you are somewhere on the line. Tabani Ndwandwe is head of personal business banking at Standard Bank, and with a specific focus on credit. And I spent time with him 4 weeks ago, and we had no cases in South Africa yet. So Tabani, I'm meeting you again in very different circumstances. Are you somewhere there? Thank you.
Yes, I am, Casper. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks. Well, Casper, for us, it was amazing that the session with you for a day, preparing on how to deal with complexity, and literally the next week, we had all the cases coming up with my team. And some of the things that
Tabani, can you just speak up a little bit? The sound doesn't sound too good. Can you just speak up a little bit, please?
Let me try. Sorry, can you hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
So I was just saying, we had a session just Friday before the big news, the big action kicked in. And so we were lucky, we had a team sort of pulled together, and we had some plans that we had put down. But I think the biggest lesson in the last week or so that I've learned is, and the first thing is, you have to find win-win solutions for yourself and your clients. Because the problem is our clients were going through exactly some of the crises that we're going through, and we are going through the same crises. As a bank particularly, we have small enterprises, and we had to think about how we solve their problems, because if we solve their problems, it makes our lives better as an organization. That was the first big thing. But this crisis, of course, is teaching us things that are new for us, which is you have a crisis financially as a system, but you have employees' health at risk as well. So you have a financial risk and employee risk here. And so one of the biggest things we needed to do is make sure that our employees feel safe and we are ensuring their safety. So things like, are they in taxis? How do the taxis they use look like? Because it's fine to protect them in the building, but what are we doing with transport to make sure that they don't get into the same places that risk their life? And we try and protect them. And so some of the things we've had to do is provide transport for the blue collar workers to make sure that we protect them from going to taxi ranks, and make sure that we are doing everything also in communication to communicate head and heart. Because one of the things we realized in the first few days of it, we were busy communicating all the business issues, but our people were not feeling that we're communicating the emotional side of the issues and how we're dealing with the space for them to communicate some of the things. Even our customers, one of the lessons we've learned is to communicate that we understand the places they are in and engage them on the places we're in. And I think the fourth thing is that as a South African community, we're a collegial community naturally, but it's times like this where we've had to be brave enough to make some tough calls and make those calls immediately and act on them, even if you are not sure, have a small team and work with them. I think those 4 things have sort of helped us in the short term. It's an ever-evolving space.
Thank you Thabani. Thank you for bringing heart into the conversation. I mean, we see that all over. We need to work with compassion in the heart. So thank you for that. From Thabani, a few words from Chris Distel. Chris is head of direct and private clients at Allan Gray. Chris, I mean, you spoke about it's PlayStation for adults, but 1 minute, very short time. Apologies for that, but what tips do you have from Allan Gray?
Yeah, I think hi everyone. Sorry, I think what my teams, what's coming back from my teams is obviously the kind of new learning of working at home, but also the intensity of suddenly working at home, where everybody is plugged into their machines. No one's no one's away from their desk, so everybody is available all of the time, even if they're in meetings, and so the pace at which things are going down is actually incredible, which is great because we're able to get things done. But the downside is by sort of mid-afternoon, people are really starting to feel quite exhausted in the day. So I've been consciously trying to just push things out that we don't need to deal with in the moment, in the day. But I'm incredibly grateful for the preparation that our IT teams and our business continuity teams have put into place up until this point, because the transition of moving 700 people off-site in the matter of 3 days has been very impressive. And the technology, I think we'd all have to agree. I think where we are from a connectivity and technology internet platform position, we actually couldn't be in a better place to be able to withstand this from a business perspective.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. So we'll just take a deep breath. It's a lot of information coming in, and I can't wait also to get the experts on. And there's like a time limit. Got to get them on from 22 to 1 to make this all happen in a good way. So a lot of information. So just for a moment, maybe a breath in and a breath out could work, because it's a lot of things happening while we're speaking it. And thank you for the valuable information. So I'm going to move from kind of a corporate move to Notsi Tshabalala. Notsi it just happens to be, or Sim Tshabalala, the ex-head of Standard Bank, happens to be his brother. But Notsi is also power on his own, and he's very much in touch with what's happening on ground level, and a serial entrepreneur. Notsi, 1 minute, please. If you can 1 minute share with us what is happening in your world, specifically regarding businesses on ground level. This is where I hope Notsi is on. And
can you hear me?
Yes, Notsi, please. If you can quickly share with us, welcome.
Great, thanks. I think what's important from our perspective is the pandemic is going to absolutely highlight the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And what we found in our business is that the difficulty in communicating with people on the ground who we consider not to be as sophisticated is going to be highlighted. They are sophisticated, they have savings, they need to be part of the mainstream economy. And we've got to try and figure out, how do we onboard these people as quickly as possible, particularly after this episode. Whether we build a parallel savings economy, we know that there's trapped value within our communities. And to a large extent, people don't trust the traditional forms of transacting. And whether we create new digital assets and the like to bring these people on board, that's something that I think is going to be exciting, particularly from an African perspective. So it's tough times. I think that young entrepreneurs, especially the youth, are going to be forced to engage with technology to take them out of these current trying times. But I think it's also an exciting period in our lifetime. Talking to our kids, this is something for them that they've been born with, that they now have to find solutions for, whether it's studying from home and the like. And I think it's a crazy but interesting opportunity for us all.
Thank you.
And that's where we are.
Thank you. And you can hear the words of a serial entrepreneur. there are opportunities even in this crisis. Thank you, Nyosi, for that. Julius Oosthuizen is the joint head of corporate commercial department of ENS, which is Ethan Nathan Sonnenberg's largest department of its kind from a legal perspective in Africa. Julius, force me here, just a very short 1 minute, please. What's happening in the legal world? Is contract still valid?
So Casper, thanks very much. And the short answer always as a lawyer is it depends. It depends on what the clause says, obviously. But we are seeing a lot of that at the moment. You know, issues where businesses are failing to meet their contractual obligations, or they really are in economic difficulties. And the short issue that arises is being able to give people advice on a timely basis. And bearing in mind the size of our organization, one of the critical things for us is to make sure that we are consistent in the advice which we are giving. So one of the key things that we've done is to establish a central repository of all of the advice which various practitioners are giving, and to make that available as a database. A, so that people don't have to reinvent the wheel, and B, to make sure that we're being consistent in what we're doing, which is absolutely critical. So I think as an advice business, that's really, really important. The other general one is that in South Africa at the moment, the regulations are coming out thick and fast. The interpretation of those and what they mean for businesses is critical. So we have to be able to respond to that real time as well. So we've upped our game significantly in terms of communications between ourselves as leaders and our departments, again, to be able to make sure that we can respond much more quickly than in the past.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's communication from a legal perspective. Thank you.
Absolutely right.
So before we go to our expert panel, we have to take a tea break or a coffee break. So in this case, it's going to be a real one. I mean, it's fascinating what's happened in the coffee industry. And Jonathan Robinson is one of the leaders, one of the founders of coffee traders in Africa, specifically the fair trade business, and being there is one of their businesses. Jonathan, what's happening in the coffee industry?
Yeah, so firstly, don't go to any meeting without a cup of coffee. I think that's key. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I need mine.
Always good to start there. I mean, yeah, for us, it has been exceptionally difficult. I mean, we just literally had our business drop off a cliff. Just from a being there perspective, I mean, we supply 90% into hospitality industry and corporate and cafes and restaurants, and obviously that is ground to an absolute halt. We have a channel open into the retail space, which we are pursuing with everything we have. And I think probably my main sort of tip is just this ability to adapt and to make decisions fast. We've gone for channels online and with partners that we never suspected that we would perhaps partner with to try and get our coffee out there. Because one thing for sure is that people need coffee. It's just getting it to them, which is important. I think just the other thing that has been quite incredible is just, although our business is in proper distress, because we have such a business with such strong purpose and such strong why, I've been absolutely amazed by how our staff have just rallied behind with a real sort of desire to sweat blood and tears to make it happen. So yeah.
So even in the coffee, the why and the purpose is crucial. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for that. Yeah. So over to our expert panel. If I can get Sonia Blichner to speak for 5 minutes. Sonia, just what's happening systemically? I mean, Sonia kind of wrote a beautiful blog about we were all trained in a zoo, but the world has become a jungle, and I'm not so sure if it's a jungle anymore. I wonder what it is. Sonia, can you please give us 5 minutes of your insights, and hopefully next time you'll get 10 or 20 minutes to share with us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Casper. I think I'm really thankful that there are people looking after our coffee. I can't imagine anything worse than being in lockdown with no coffee. Yes, Casper, I really hesitate to own that space at the moment of being an expert. I think one of the things that this virus has shown us is that there are no experts now. We are all in uncharted territory together, and to take the zoo and the jungle metaphor, it almost feels a little bit like we've all been thrown into outer space. It feels a little bit like Star Trek. We're kind of boldly going where no man has gone before. That's kind of how it's feeling. And I think a couple of things, systemically, that this virus has, I think we've always known it. I think we've always known that the world is complex and that the world is inherently uncertain, but we've engaged with it a little bit as if it's a concept. It's been conceptual to us up to now. I think we've always, with the leaders that I've worked with in the past, I could see that they conceptually understand complexity, but there was still like an illusion of certainty. There were still things that we could be certain about. And I think that has now, it's almost as if the rug has been pulled out from under us. And uncertainty and complexity has suddenly become very much our lived reality. And I think some of the things from complexity that we're starting to see is we're starting to understand just how connected we all are. We're also getting a lesson in non-linearity. We're very much, we've been schooled into this world where Newtonian physics kind of applied, where, we had this idea that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And now what we're being schooled in is non-linearity, how one case can almost overnight grow into 700, start doubling. So we're all getting very familiar with these exponential curves. And we're also starting to learn that, uncertainty is just the reality that we find ourselves in, and we cannot wish it away. We can't pretend it's not there. We just simply need to deal with it. And some of what I'm seeing is people are really feeling unmoored. It's as if they've lost their bearings, and the stable ground that they could move from is being eroded and is disappearing. And it's interesting, some of what I've picked up in the conversation is there's this interesting, all of these tensions that we have to navigate now, because some of us are stuck in busyness and others find themselves in paralysis. And both of those can keep us from acting in ways that we should be acting. It also feels, someone mentioned the word velocity. It seems as if everything is happening really fast, and we're not taking the time to take a step back and slow down. And, one of the metaphors I like using is sometimes we need to get off of the dance floor, off of the freneticness of the dance, and take a balcony perspective. How can we start looking at the patterns that is still there, that's unfolding, even though the old patterns that we could recognize are no longer valid? So I think one of the things that I'm encouraging people to do is to not, yes, you need to act decisively, you need to be present, but I think also don't fall into the trap of just being busy, and falling into the trap of just feeling that speed now is of the essence all the time. So there's that tension there between having to act and act fast, but having to slow down as well at the same time. And then maybe just one last comment. I think the domain of crisis is also the domain of innovation. So when you send your crisis teams in, send an innovation team with them. So Dave Snowden always said, innovation does not come from creativity. Innovation comes when there's a pressure of time, starvation of resource, and perspective shift. And I think we've got all three of those now in spades. So while the anxiety might be getting us into a very myopic focus and this focus on busyness, I think we also need to be aware that there are tremendous opportunities in this moment as well. And we really need to stay aware of them and to be intentional about pursuing them. So that's, I think, more or less what I have to contribute right now. I hope that's useful. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you so much. To fast track something, we might have to slow it down. So thank you so much. Over to you, David. Last time, I wish our meeting or our next meeting was unwooded Chardonnay or unwooded Chenin Blanc, because that's what we had last time. It is unfortunately not the case. Thank you so much for making time available. Know how precious your
your time and everybody's time is on this call. So David is from GTD. Some of you can just Google that. It says it all. David, I mean, we speak about actions. What is appropriate? And thank you for sharing. And we will share with the whole group details about your company too. Thank you.
Thanks, Casper. You know, interestingly, I have to start out by saying I was literally on Wall Street when the towers came down and watched the world turn upside down. And I have to give everybody sort of at least a little optimism that says, yes, and historically, not only did the world turn around, it turned around in spades after all of that. So I very much applaud people that saying, yes, it's an interesting time, but it's an opportunity. You know, there is opportunity in crisis. There's opportunity for innovation. There's opportunity to learn a lot. And come on, the world just sped up to where it was going anyway. The fact that we have a virtual world now, just, you know, in spades, that's where the world was headed no matter what. So it just sped that up exponentially. So that was the direction the world was going to go into anyway. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out as the cultures sort of absorb the virtuality that they have to be in right now and get a lot more conscious about when that works, what that works for, and then, you know, where you still need the face-to-face and the human interactions to make that work. You know, a lot of my work is about how do I stay focused, keep my head clear? How do I keep space so that I can think strategically, think creatively, think innovatively, and be present? And a whole lot of what, you know, I've learned and taught over all these 35 years is what's the thought process that we need to apply. It's not necessarily easy, as a matter of fact, in situations like this. How do you keep focused on a positive outcome and action? We've heard several of the people already mention, hey, don't hesitate. You need to keep moving. You know, now's the time to be able to do that. You just need to make sure that you're clear about where you're going, and then, you know, how do you execute against that? You know, as I said, and I think you introduced me to begin with, that a lot of the hallmark of what we teach is how do I stay appropriately engaged? You don't have to complete stuff, but you do need to be appropriately engaged. Are you appropriately engaged with your cat? Are you appropriately engaged with your relationships? Are you appropriately engaged with your health? And appropriate engagement doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do stuff about it. It means that you need to make sure that you're dealing with it from a driver's seat as opposed to victim or complaining mode. That's, you know, easier said than done. But as you might know, and as you might be aware of, and anybody who's familiar with getting things done in the GTD model, it's really tested when you go through the major transitions in life. You sold your house, you bought your house, you got fired, you got hired, you graduated, you suddenly have a new boss you don't like. You suddenly inherited your mom's health care. All of those kinds of things is where the mettle is tested in terms of how well you manage yourself, how well you can stay focused on the outcomes that you desire, and then sort of be in the driver's seat about it. It doesn't make those things easy, but you want to make sure that you're appropriately engaged with them to then take advantage of all that stuff. It also occurred to me, I know this may sound a little weird, but you know, obviously 9/11 was a major upside down of the world turn, but also 2008, 2009, and the recession and the crisis there. I had to lay off half my staff, you know, in 2009. And interestingly, I was having dinner with a key person at Fidelity Investments in the U.S. And I said, how are you guys handling this deep recession? He said, they were preparing for it when times were really good, because in the investment community, that's the only time you get market share, when it crashes. And they could gain market share by being ready for that kind of thing. So I think there are lessons, maybe hard ones, but there's still lessons to be learned, you know, in all of this, relative just even to competition and the ability to be able to then come out smelling like a rose, or at least come out surviving. And, you know, all the tips I think that I've heard everybody say, I would just absolutely validate those as well. One of the things that I think is very necessary is not only do you stay focused on a positive outcome, but you need to then do a real current reality assessment of what's the worst thing that could happen. And you need to have everybody ready to accept that that could happen. The reason is, if you don't do that exercise, and we just did that yesterday, because our business is based upon the, you know, training royalties of training of all of our licensees around the world, and that just crashed in terms of that whole business. So we just sat down with the spreadsheets and said, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen in terms of the worst case? The reason is, if you don't do that, there's a part of you that will still be afraid of that. And you need to get rid of that fear by being able to kind of step up to the plate, kind of look at the lion in the mouth and say, okay, could we survive the worst case? And how could we do that? Obviously, you don't then want to dwell on the fear of that. You just need to accept the reality that that could happen. And then could people stand up to the plate for that? And what could happen in the way? So the ideal is obviously have a positive vision of wild success, be ready to accept the downside that could happen and shoot down the middle. I think that's the healthiest approach. That's certainly what we've just done. That's my biggest suggestion for people is don't be afraid of the downside here. And, you know, stare it in the face and say, okay, and it sounds like the people that you've had speak, Casper, certainly have done that and have stepped up to the plate to, you know, move forward in that way. So there are probably a lot of other things I could say, but is anything pops into your mind you want to ask me, you know, about this?
David, can I ask you a question? I mean, one of the things lockdown, you know, we're locking down our houses not to get the virus, but we can't lock down our headspace with so many virtual meetings, so many WhatsApps, so many latest researchers, so many, and they're all interesting, they're all fascinating. What would be good tips for leaders to just in a way have a COVID-19 neutral zone where I can actually protect myself and think, what would be best tips from GTD's perspective?
Well, you know, the main part of GTD is like, what most has your attention? And what do you need to do or decide to get that off your mind? Doesn't mean you'll get it finished, but what do I need to do to get clear space? Because it's the clear space, Casper, that you need. From clear space, you can decide what to read, what not to read, much more easily. You can also give you the room to trust your intuitive judgments, which is what you're going to have to do now. As someone said, you know, look, you can't wait to have it perfect. You can't wait to collaborate with everybody. You're going to have to trust your gut. You know, I was talking not too long ago with the head of executive development for Siemens. And, you know, he said, I asked him, I said, you know, with 5,000 executives under his purview, I said, what's the hallmark of good leadership? He said two things. One is the willingness to make a decision out of your intuitive judgment before things are perfect, and the courage to be able to make that decision before everybody signs off on it, and the ability to be able to walk into an ambiguous situation and create at least a working model that people can work within. He said those are the two things that are the element. And to everybody's point, and especially to Sonia's point too, and Simon's to begin with, you need to back off and reflect, and you need space to do that. Because not only do you have those different parts of your brain, there's an archive part of your brain that needs rest to be able to then make sense out of the whole thing. So whatever you need to do to be able to keep your world as quiet as you can and get your head as clear as you can and get appropriately engaged with all of those things that have your attention, then it's easier to make the kind of triage decisions you need to about what can I just leave on someday, maybe right now? What can I just park and say, that is not a mission critical thing for me to do? What do I most need to do this afternoon that I think will relieve the biggest pressure off my mind? And sometimes it's like bite the hardest thing first. You know, first thing in the morning when you're fresh, handle that ugliest email you got to handle. You know, and another big champion of my stuff, Joss Whedon, the guy who built The Adventures and, you know, very successful producer. His priority was always to do what's the most fun thing, and so I do both. So it's sometimes I need to you know, eat the frog, the ugly frog first, and then, you know, sort of give myself a reward for having done that, you know, or let me just find the fun thing, the thing that would be most interesting right now so that I can keep my energy up and stay involved. And I think laughter is a big key. My wife is sending out notes that basically laughter and soap to everybody, you know.
David, thank you.
Those are the master keys. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. And what most probably will happen on our next sessions is William Elliott, who's a fantastic colleague and also a friend, and he's doing fantastic work for GTD in South Africa. William, are you somewhere? We just maybe want to say hello. And is there maybe one word or two words of advice that you might have?
Hi, Casper. Thank you very much. I think just to translate some of what David's saying is track everything outside your head. Have a capture tool, a pad of paper, or somewhere where you can throw the thoughts, because they're coming thick and fast. And don't trust your head to come back to something you thought, oh shit, I must do that. Put it all down. I would start every morning or perhaps twice a day with a mind sweep. Just get everything out and then pick what's actionable and what's not. But keep emptying out the mind into some trusted place that you can get back to. to give you that clear space. So capture would be the first habit to really go on.
Thank you so much. So just to share again with all of you, as our plan is to collect all this information, get a one-pager from all the experts of what happened here, and get that to you as soon as possible. We might even find smaller groups of putting people in connection. I think it's now where we have to learn from each other as quick as possible. And also from a mindful perspective, we were trying to have the session not too crammed, to have some space and setting you out to the world there. And I would want to leave you with a piece from Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a Vietnamese.
Before you read that, can I just ask one thing? There is a Zoom group chat. If you could just please leave a few comments around how you experienced this and how we can improve it, because it will be difficult to track everybody after the call. Over to you, Casper.
Please don't do that exactly right now. So Thich Nhat Hanh said in the Second World War, actually in the Vietnam War, and he's from Vietnam, and there was a key thing of transporting people between little islands was on little boats, and there were storms. And he wrote this piece, and I think it's true for all of you, because you're going to have to do. We're about to panic because our situation is no better than that of a small boat in stormy seas. Our situation is no better than that of a small boat in stormy seas. A small boat only needs one person to stay calm, to survive. Only one. If one person stays calm, everybody can survive. We need people who can sit still, who are still able to smile and laugh, who can still walk peacefully. We need people like that in order to save us. You could be that person. All of us can be that person. I hope you can go out there, find a place of being calm with a lot of uncalmness and disruption in this world. Thank you so much for attending to this session, and wishes of kindness to all of you. Thank you.